So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to see very good attendance for this webinar. As it has been commented already by Laura, we are going to be presenting the results of one of the very recent reports that has been published this week on the citizen-generated data and the role that citizen-generated data may have in data.europa.eu. So basically, I mean, like for the outline of the webinar, the outline of the presentation is going to be as follows. We will start talking, or giving a general introduction to what we understand by citizen-generated data. You will see from the introduction that there is not a completely common agreement on what we can characterize as citizen-generated data, and this will be part of the initial discussion that we will have. Then we will be talking about the research method that we have followed for this report. Basically, we will see that we have done a combination of desk research and also field study analyzing the open data portals, or several open data portals and the data sets that they have, and trying to analyze how many of those data sets could be considered or characterized as citizen-generated data. And we will be commenting on some of these results. Yeah? On the one hand, from our desk research activity, we will be showing the proposal that we are making on dimensions to categorize citizen-generated data when it comes into being published as open data. And also we will provide a result, the analysis of the field study that we have done. Then we will finish with some conclusions and initial recommendations, which will be refined afterwards, because this report is actually the first of a series of reports, 3 in total, where we will be going into much more detail on what citizen-generated data could actually mean in the context of the open data community. So later on, you will have time also to for question and answering session, any type of feedback, and we will make the closing. So if we want to start now, we will go directly into the introduction, mostly talking about what is the context that we are starting from, what is citizen-generated data, why is it important in the European context. So let's go first of all on where do we start from, yeah? So basically, we started with this report from the assumption that we see that there is a lot of data that is being generated by citizens in their daily activities, yeah? And this data may be generated consciously, yeah? Whenever we are submitting a claim, a suggestion to our local municipality, or when we are making an edit in Wikipedia or Wikidata or OpenStreetMap, or unconsciously. In many cases, as part of our daily activities, we are providing data that can be used by private companies. It's quite common that people are providing business ratings in Google Places, Foursquare, any of these types of sites, or unconsciously. For instance, whenever we are entering into the public transport network in our cities, in the municipalities where we live, we are in many cases using a smart card, and as part of this activity, which is actually taking the bus or taking the metro or taking a tram, we are actually generating some data that can be later on used for the benefit of society, for better planning, or for whatever other purpose we may think that it is useful. So this is something that we were observing. There are also projects that are specifically focused on getting citizens to provide data, to create data, like the citizen science projects. Probably some of you, yeah, some of the attendees have participated in one form or another in any of these projects, and they are also relevant because they get citizens. All of us are actually contributing in that case to the benefit of science. So that said, another observation, the initial observation that we had, was that these types of data sources are not generally very widely available in the open data ecosystem. Yeah, in data.europa.eu nor in the other open data portals that we all know. And this is probably something that comes a little bit by design. I mean, it's not that on purpose we said we are not going to include citizen-generated data, and you will see the results afterwards. But in general, I mean, all these portals started as a way to publish and to make available government-generated data, yeah, and that's normal. I mean, that was the essential part, especially at the very beginning of all these open data initiatives. I mean, we wanted to explore whether, I mean, there is an opportunity, there are some opportunities, and also which are the challenges that we're gonna have in this context, yeah. And finally, I mean, the final observation that we had is that in any case, this type of data would be also a very nice complement to the existing official data sets, yeah? So, I mean, one of the typical examples, yeah, where there is always a lot of controversy, yeah, and lots of very interesting discussions and even arguments, is related to the usefulness of OpenStreetMap data, what it is sometimes called also volunteer geographical information. That may have even more up-to-date or detailed information than what the cities have in their own information systems. So, I mean, that could be a nice opportunity to complement existing official data sets or government-generated data sets, also to kind of improve them, create them. And also at the same time, I mean, this would be an opportunity also to generate more awareness about the open data portals among the public. So these are all the elements or all the initial assumptions and observations that we were starting from. And taking that into account, we had our main research questions, yeah, our main goal of the series of reports. Yeah, as I was telling you, this is a first report in a series of reports where we are going to be analyzing the role that citizen-generated data can have in open data portals in general and in data.europa.eu in particular. So our main research questions are these ones, yeah? Which are the opportunities and challenges associated to the inclusion of citizen-generated data in open data portals? Would traditional data providers be willing to incorporate these data sources or to allow derivations of their own data sources with citizen-generated data? I mean, what is the current view, yeah, from many of our stakeholders? And at the same time, I mean, if it makes sense, yeah, I mean, we may determine that it doesn't make sense, or we may really think that it makes a lot of sense. How could we promote citizens to become more active data providers, yeah, for the open data ecosystem? So this is the starting point. These are the research questions that we have, and I usually like, I mean, and this is part of my having my hat as a professor at a university. I usually like checking whether my students, and in that case, my attendees for the webinar, are not completely bored already, and they are still active. And there could be a little bit of time for question time. Yeah, I mean, I could give you just 2 minutes to try to define what, in your opinion, some of you have probably already read the report, yeah, and you may have some advantage over there. What do you think that citizen-generated data is for you? I mean, what does this name suggest to you? And whether you think that it is available in European open data portals in general. So, I mean, as I was suggesting over here, probably, I mean, if you are happy to write on the chat what you think that citizen-generated data is, I mean, and what your opinion is about it. It would be nice just to have an initial overview of your views as attendees. Yeah, I know that this is not typical from webinars, but I really like this type of interaction. So I will be checking, yeah, the answers that you have. Yeah, so I see people just saying already surveys, geolocation data. That's something we will see that it's part of the type of data that we have been talking about in the report. I'm not sure, I mean, whether there is anybody else who wants to, yeah, include more things, yeah. Transport services, that's a very rich data source, in fact, and it has been fundamental, for instance, in the COVID-19 era that we are living, yeah. Data using apps, yeah, I mean, generated using apps. Loyalty programs, that's an interesting one, Giuseppe, yeah? Okay. mobile devices, health condition data, yeah, which is always a little bit more delicate, yeah, as we can think, and you will see in the report that we are especially talking about the data that can be anonymized or pseudo-anonymized at least, yeah. Okay, citizen science data as well from Eva. Pollution, air quality, that's one of the typical cases, especially in citizen science project as well, yeah. And all the data traces, yeah, that we live, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, like, feel free to continue writing if you wish. I mean, I will be just checking things afterwards in the chat as well, and we may probably have a nice Q&A session there. Yeah, and as else comments, we don't think that this is already widely available in open data portals, which was the second the second question that we had. Okay, let's see what we have done and I mean, like the conclusions that we have obtained from this study. Yeah. So let's start first with what is citizen-generated data. I mean, the bad news, yeah, I mean, in quotes, yeah, that we have right now is that there are no really concrete, very strong, complete definitions that we can find in the literature. Yeah. I have put over there a couple of references. You have the full references in the report, obviously, with some definitions, partial definitions that are giving us some dimensions, some characteristics of what we could call citizen-generated data. Yeah. So as you can see over there, a form of open data for public governance, so as to facilitate collaborative action between stakeholders, data that people or organizations produce, with the focus on monitoring, demanding, or driving change on issues that affect them. This is very related to those cases where it is related to climate change and things alike, like air quality, as we have seen. Data actively given by citizens, yeah, on data sets collected by governments or international institutions, as we see, that is probably very related to what we are interested in. And also, I mean, those ones that are actively produced or gathered by citizens, so as to make an argument to support environmental justice. I mean, like, again, very related to the climate change, to the climate considerations, yeah, from citizens. So these are just some examples of partial definitions of what citizen-generated data could be. And in fact, I mean, this is the main thing. Yeah, there are multiple definitions, and most of them differ on the required level of consciousness in the data production process. Yeah, there are also multiple applications. I mean, it can generate value for public and private companies. Yeah, in fact, private companies are generating quite a lot of value from that. And it may also have social implications, yeah, related especially when we are talking about governments on public participation, also because being able to produce data, accurate data, can also increase the democratic health, yeah, of and the social involvement of citizens, yeah, in projects. So in the report, we actually get like this definition provided by Major and Potger. Sorry if I have pronounced the surnames incorrectly, that we think that it is almost like the most complete one, which is that citizen-generated data is data that individuals consciously generate and that are openly available for use in the public domain. In fact, we propose a slightly revised extension of this definition, I mean, which would be the one that we are using more generally in the context of the report. Yeah, is data that individuals consciously and unconsciously generate or curate, and they are available for use in the public domain. And in this case, I mean, we could put in parentheses via an open data portal, yeah, or in the context of an open data ecosystem. So, I mean, even if we are not intending to provide a complete definition, this could be like a definition that we will be using for the rest of the presentation, the rest of the report. Yeah. So we move now into the research methodology. What have we done so far? As I told you, this is the first of a series of reports. What is the work that we have been doing in these past months in relation to these research goals that we have? Yeah. So first of all, we started with the step of desk research based on usual protocols for systematic literature reviews, where our aim was mostly to identify the citizen-generated data definitions, as we have been discussing already, discover how citizen-generated data is being reported to be used by public agencies for different purposes, and also identify common dimensions that are being used to categorize citizen-generated data with this open data context in mind. Yeah. So we were using a couple of sources, the Web of Science, the GRC Publications Repository, looking for topics like citizen-generated data, citizen science, open data, trying to combine all these keywords. And I mean, the report is more precise on the types of keywords that we have been using. And the amount of papers that we found were these ones. We also applied inclusion and exclusion criteria so as to make sure that we were actually focusing on documents that were discussing citizen-generated data as open data, and that could also have dimensions or categories to help us in this categorization. And we got finally into 7 papers plus 1 that we obtained from the references of those papers. This is quite a typical a way of performing this research, and I mean this was the selection of papers that we did. Based on this, we focus on the dimensions, on the definition of an evaluation framework, a set of dimensions that we could use in order to characterize citizen-generated data in an open data context. And with this set of dimensions, which is the first set of results that I will be presenting next, we made an analysis of a sample of European open data portals, national, regional, local, to find which are the types of citizen-generated data that are offered there, yeah, and which are the tools, which are the things that we can find, understanding that it is not exhaustive, first of all, and that we may have missed also some relevant data sets in our study. Yeah, we were trying to be as comprehensive as possible, but there are always limitations in this type of studies. Yeah, the focus of today's webinar is mostly sharing this knowledge that we have acquired, getting initial feedback also from you and new ideas on what we could explore in the coming months, and also making the initial steps for stakeholder identification for the next phases, yeah, for the phases of interviews and workshops that we are going to be running next. Yeah. So now we move into the results. Yeah, the first set of results, which is related to the dimensions to categorize citizen-generated data. After our analysis, and the report is much more detailed on where we have obtained the different dimensions from, I mean, taking into account our literature review, we can talk about 2 main groups of dimensions. Those ones that are more applicable to the data portal, seen as a complete artifact. Yeah. So over here, we are mostly thinking about what is the percentage of citizen-generated data sets in the portal compared to the whole set of data sets. We will see later that probably this was not a very good dimension to use after our analysis. I mean, and probably we will have to change it a little bit, yeah, in the future. Whether there were any general guidelines for publishing citizen-generated data in the open data portal, whether there are methods or tools that are specifically focused on citizen-generated data management and use, and also whether there are quality assurance mechanisms, again, focused on citizen-generated data. We know that many of these elements exist for the, let's call it traditional open government data. And in this case, we wanted to focus on whether there is anything specifically for citizen-generated data, yeah, in those portals. At the same time, we were also considering dimensions that are specific for the data sets. So once that we get into a portal, we check the data sets, and those ones that can be identified as citizen-generated data, well, we are trying to characterize them as follows. Yeah. First of all, focusing on the area, the domain that they are working on or that they are dealing with, geolocalization, environmental, citizen science, votes, surveys, questions, answers, suggestions, claims, yeah, which is more or less like a broad category, or statistics, yeah, which is quite common in many open data portals, yeah. This set of areas is one that, again, that we have obtained from the analysis that we have done on the literature, on typical categories that we have seen. and is kind of orthogonal to other categories that are commonly used for the categorization of data sets in open data portals. We were also considering the roles of the different actors. What are the roles of citizens, of public administrations, or other potential stakeholders in initiating the projects, in funding the projects. Yeah? Then another important thing is whether the data is primary or secondary. What do we mean by that? It's primary whenever the main focus is actually generating the data. So it's a data set that is generated with the contributions of citizens. Very typical case, claims and suggestions from citizens in local municipality open data portals. Yeah? And secondary cases are those ones that are derived from another use. Yeah? And very typically, the ones from transport that we have commented already are very clear cases of secondary citizen-generated data. It's data that is being generated because of providing a different type of service, yeah? A service which is public transport, riding bikes, or whatever else that may be relevant, yeah? Also, we consider this dimension of data by or about citizens. It's data generated by citizens, or it's data that contains information about citizens, yeah? Correspondingly and correctly anonymized or aggregated as needed, yeah? So that part on the left is really like the most important dimensions. Then there are also other dimensions that were appearing, and we wanted also to use and to take into account for characterizing citizen-generated data, no? Whether there were any specific guidelines for specific data sets, as we were doing before for the complete open data portal, whether there is any expected impact in terms of policy or operational for this data set, considering that many of them are focused on public participation, budgets, and so on, and then there is an expected impact on them. And then typical things like the formats, the licensing. Again, I mean, this is not an exhaustive set of dimensions. We may think of many others. We wanted to keep a balance between trying to characterize well the data sets that we were analyzing and the portals that we were analyzing, and also, I mean, not being super exhaustive and making it possible to do it, yeah? Mm-hmm. So we will be happy to revise this, yeah, in the future with all the comments that may come in the following phases. So some illustrative examples, yeah, some illustrative examples of the results that we have obtained. Yeah, I mean, I have some data sets, yeah, that we have identified. We can talk, for instance, about the data sets on public bicycles in Zaragoza. Yeah, so this is a city data set. Which is geolocation based. It's based on the places where people have been going around, yeah, with the bikes. Is funded and initiated by public administration, and it's a case of secondary data, yeah, taking into account the previous consideration or dimensions. We may have the one on questions, answers, suggestions, claims from Barcelona, yeah, and this is a case of survey, funded and initiated by public administration, primary, yeah, because it's the main focus is really generating that data set. The one of participatory budgets in Avignon, or the one about the surveys for visitor centers in Helsinki, yeah. So these are just some examples. There are plenty of others in the additional material that we have generated and that you have access to as well, yeah. So these are just some examples of the type of analysis that we have been doing. So once that we finish with the dimensions, let's go into the field analysis, yeah? Going into some open data portals and trying to see, I mean, why they contain, I mean, which are the characteristics of the type of citizen-generated data that they contain, yeah? So, I mean, being exhaustive over here could be really unfeasible, yeah, in the time frame that we have. So taking into account the analysis that we did in the literature review and some references to some specific data portals, we tried to get like a good balance of geographical coverage, portals that were clearly identified as having citizen-generated data, portals that were not identified at the national, regional, and local level, yeah? Why are there a few more on the local level? Because generally and quite normally, it is considered that the citizen-generated data has a larger impact at the local level, and that's the reason why we were expecting to see more data sets at that local level. Yeah. Obviously, we will be surely missing relevant cases. Yeah. For instance, I mean, like while we were writing the report, but we had already finished the field analysis, we didn't have time to incorporate it. The city of Valencia in Spain just announced their strategy for incorporating citizen-generated data in their open data portal. So this is a very clear case of a good example. I'm not sure now about the number of citizen-generated data sets that they have, but I mean, it was quite clear. It was quite nice because it came almost when we were finishing the report. But of course, I mean, we will use the survey later that you will complete to give us some more examples or contact us by email. I mean, if you want us to consider your cases for the future. Yeah. So in this context, we were working on spreadsheets for the annotation process. You have over there several examples of the types of kind of analysis statistics that we were compiling from the different portals. And I mean, like if you go deeper into the link that you have down there from Zenodo, I can. I mean, it's available on the report, and I can share it later if you wish. You will have access to the Excel file, and then you will be able to, I mean, to check whether the annotations are correct or not, or whether or how you could do it for your own case, if you wish. So let's now go into some of the results, yeah, some of those findings that we identified, considering again, I mean, and that's quite important, that we are not exhaustive. This was just an initial overview of what is the presence, yeah, of citizen-generated data in many of these places, in many of these portals. So some of the results that we have obtained are, for instance, related to the percentage of citizen-generated data in each of the studied portals, yeah, in each of the portals that we identified. In fact, I mean, what we can see over here, the blue cases are the ones that are citizen-generated data, considering the whole set of cases, the 100% of data sets that are available in the data portals. I mean, one may have the impression that it's quite rather low, yeah, in comparison with the rest of available data sets. That's why I was telling you that probably these dimensions should be rephrased somehow, because probably considering number of data sets is not so relevant in this context. We expect, we know that most probably citizen-generated data is not going to be super popular. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be the main dimension to consider. Yeah. We can see the average percentage is below 1%. Yeah, in general, there are some clear cases. Yeah, like for instance, we know that France had a very nice strategy, for instance, to include data sets identified as citizen-generated data as part of their strategy. Yeah, to have data being published. Yeah. But it appears very low because it's below that 1%, considering the whole set of data sets. Yeah. So, I mean, probably this is not the best way to present these results, but I think that it was important to have this message, yeah, of the percentage of data set that we can have. Yeah. The case of Poland over there, where we don't have any value, is mostly because we were trying to find with different keywords, yeah, which is one of the recommendations that will come later, to find citizen-generated data sets, and we were not able to find any. Yeah, I mean, like probably this will have to be revised in case that there is any of those cases. Yeah. There is also an analysis that we have done on the proportion of actors that are involved in citizen-generated data, and now we are considering those ones that we have identified that are published in open data portals, and now, I mean, like going a little bit farther on them. Yeah. So as we can see on the left, most of the projects, most of the citizen-generated data sets, yeah, that are being published are actually funded by public administrations. They become two initiatives that are funded by public administrations, and also most of them are initiated by public administrations. Yeah. So this is already a little bit of contrast. I mean, we were not necessarily expecting this. We thought that citizen science projects, which are in many cases initiated by associations, by citizens themselves, by researchers, would be more popular over here. But our understanding was that it was not necessarily the case. There were only a couple of exceptions that we could identify in some of the Spanish data portals. Yeah. Another analysis that we did was the the data sets per portal and area, considering the areas, statistics, question and answers, surveys, votes, citizen science, environmental, and so on. And as you can see, I mean, there is really like a mix. We wouldn't be able to really say this is the usual composition of citizen-generated data that you are going to find, considering the areas that we have identified. Obviously, statistics appear quite a while, because it's generally data about citizens, and in many cases, it's promoted or is funded and initiated by public administrations. But we were expecting, for instance, to have more environmental cases, which are very typical case of citizen science and citizen-generated data. But there were not so many, as we were originally expecting as well. So the main message over here is that there is not a clear kind of composition, or distribution of the citizen-generated data that we can find. Also, in terms of the role of citizens, and whether, first of all, we are talking about primary or secondary data, and whether we are talking about data about or by citizens. We have also another surprise over here. We realized that primary citizen-generated data is much more frequent in the open data portals than secondary data. We were expecting the opposite, because in general, in many of the cases, the data that is being generated by about citizens and by citizens, as we have already said, by mobile phones, by smart cards, and things alike, it is considered to be much more frequent. And our intuition over here is that, it is much more frequent. There is a lot of data that is being accumulated, from citizens in general, but this belongs in general to the sphere of private companies in general. So the unconscious data, which is normally what we have in many cases of secondary citizen-generated data, is not so popular in the context of the open data community. It is more popular in that case in the context of the private sector. Okay, so this was another finding that was a little bit surprising for us. And in terms of by and about, I mean, you can see also that there is a good number of cases where we have data about citizens. I mean, like that in general contains surveys and statistics that are containing data of where citizens are, which are the types of services that they use, and so on. And this is what it is being represented in the data portals. Finally, as a final, probably not so so relevant, but I mean, as I said, it's not a kind of a really important dimension. We also check the formats, also licenses and so on. And I mean, we could see that, as more or less expected, most of the data sets were available in a tabular format. And there were some cases where you also had them in linked formats. I mean, like considering also JSON and other formats that are more easy to handle in that case. So we can also say that I mean, as additional findings, that are also available in the report, not necessarily over here. That a few of the portals allow citizens to contribute their data sets. For instance, the French national portal provides options for citizens to upload their own versions of data sets, which is very nice thing. Also in the province of Trent in Italy, local administrations are allowed to contribute, I mean, data sets that they have, and I think that that's also nice. But in general, I mean, we have not found any case where there is clear support for a collaborative edition of the data sets, having the similarity to what we could have in Wikidata or in OpenStreetMap or in Wikipedia, as some examples. And in none of the portals, we have clear documentation about how to ensure the quality of citizen-generated data or the governance, the pipelines that we would have in terms of citizen-generated data. So this means that, I mean, this will go as a recommendation if we want to improve or to increase the presence of citizen-generated data in the open data portals, ecosystems. We will probably have to also include this type of documentation on how to ensure the quality, how to govern the citizen-generated data that is being published, and so on. So These are some of the highlights of the analysis. The report is a little bit more detailed on this. And now, I mean, we have a set of initial conclusions and especially initial recommendations, yeah, which are extracted from this analysis that we have done, from the reports, from the analysis of the literature review, and also from our feeling, yeah, when having done all these, I mean, or having had all these analysis of the relevant literature and a couple of discussions, informal discussions with some key stakeholders. Yeah? So in terms of conclusions, I mean, we have tried to give 10 conclusions. Probably they could have been summarized in a little bit less. You will see that some of them are really complementary. They could have joined together. But basically, I mean, we can just say that as we were expecting initially, as one of you already pointed out at the very beginning, the presence of citizen-generated data in open data portals is still very low. Mostly in those cases where there is some CGD published as open data, citizens are mostly involved in generating or curating data. But the work of publishing is actually driven by public administrations. This is expected considering the processes that are normally followed for publishing open data. Which are the most common areas? Question and answer, surveys, statistics, although as we have seen, there is not a clear distribution. Primary citizen-generated data is more common, yeah, which was kind of unexpected initially. Most of it is shared with open licenses. I mean, that's quite clear. That was expected because it's in open data portals, although it is not for the 100% of them. Yeah, most of them are as well available in open formats. And in the negative things, yeah, I mean, none of the portals were including any clear documentation on how to contribute and use citizen-generated data. We may have missed it, but we have not found it clearly. It's not clear. I mean, we don't have clear tools, yeah, to facilitate citizen contribution, mobile apps, things that we could use in order to increase this provision of data, understanding that it is citizen-generated data. We didn't find any kind of participatory approaches, evidence of participatory approaches to design the data pipelines that can be used. So there is an opportunity to involve all those working with citizen-generated data, citizen science in this process. And in general, I mean, no guidelines for governing citizen-generated data in general. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As a second point, I mean, like second group of things, the initial recommendations, yeah, that will have to be refined on the next phases, yeah. So I think that, I mean, some of the recommendations, if we want to include more citizen-generated data, if we want to make open data portals like a very nice place, yeah, to store this data, as we have already identified in some European projects, yeah, where as a result of policy masterclasses and focus groups, for instance, there were recommendations on saying, oh, why not using the national data portals as a placeholder for all the citizen science data that is being generated? So we should actually do more open calls, partnerships with citizen science players in order to make sure that they have a place, yeah, where they can publish their data. If not, for the time being, they are publishing in general in their own website, in their own place. So you will find data sets, open data sets, but which are not currently metadated. I mean, there is no metadata for it. They are not currently cataloged. So, I mean, probably we can increase the visibility of those efforts. Yeah. There should be a way, why not, of having keywords or, I mean, like a classification code list or something like where we can also include this point of citizen-generated data. I mean, it has been very hard for us to identify data sets that could be generated by citizens in the current portals just by using keywords, yeah, because there was no clear category. In the same way as we have clear categories for domains, yeah, environment, mobility, transport, government, and so on, yeah. So again, I mean, using several EU official languages to facilitate these comparative studies, that would be also nice. And I mean, we could think of thesauri, multilingual thesauri for this. There should be also, I mean, we should establish procedures to capture all the processes, all the data validation methods that are being used, because, I mean, in our opinion, this could increase the trust of third-party data users, and also extend the data metadata quality metrics. There has been a very nice effort on the MQF system, for instance, for the metadata quality assessment. So why not including also some additional metrics that are being used in the context of citizen science or in general in crowdsourcing citizen source data? Yeah. Then why not? I mean, I think that it would be also important for visibility to include these some aspects related to citizen-generated data in the upcoming reports on open data that, I mean, we are running in the context of these projects as well. Collect new use cases. I mean, I think that having also data stories, new use cases that are using citizen-generated data may be a useful thing to include. And in general, I mean, and this is valid for any data set, not exclusively for citizen-generated data, collocating applications, tools, documentation, creating tools and applications that consume this type of data so that citizens can contribute to original data sources and allow citizens to contribute information within the portal, because this will also help in the creation process. And I know, I mean, that there may be some constraints or challenges, for some of the traditional data providers on allowing citizens to add on their data sets, but this may be a nice contribution to have. Yeah, these are initial recommendations. We have next steps, and these next steps are actually focused on, I mean, 2 more related reports that are going to be coming, be alive in the coming months, and for which we are preparing already. So the first one will be an identification of other types of citizen-generated data sources that we have not identified in this report. This will be based on at least one workshop with a selected set of participants. So I mean, like you have over there a survey. I will put the link in the chat as well in a minute, so that you have access to it with a few questions, 5 questions, so that, I mean, we can collect also some of your feedback, some ideas, and also even some contacts that we may consider for the future. Our main idea will be, that thing, which types of citizen-generated data sources may be published as open data by data providers, including data.europa.eu. Yeah. And finally, I mean, if we see that it makes sense and we continue in this process, we will move into proposing a model for the governance of citizen-generated data from an open data context. We will also probably concentrate on at least 3 specific cases, going into more details with specific stakeholders, taken from the initial workshops that we will have, and the analysis and feedback that we will receive from this report. And we will be trying to see how we could govern this, how we could provide guidelines for data providers in order to incorporate citizen-generated data. Yeah. So I will take the opportunity to copy the link. So just give me just 1 second to give you access through the chat to the link. Yeah. So this is the link so that you can access it. And just for finishing, I mean, I think that we have 10 minutes left. We could be now in the moment of having the final feedback and closing. I mean, I assume that there will be some questions. I will check now the chat, and we will finally also finish with the final feedback session that is common for all webinars. Yeah. So. Laura, I mean, if you want to, I can also put the another link over here, the QR. Probably you can also include it in the chat for the feedback for the webinar. And in any case, I mean, I'm open now to any comment on your side and any potential feedback that you may have initially from the report. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I see some questions, that has been kind of included over here. For instance, Els was asking whether citizen-generated data by default open, or are there also non-open citizen-generated data? So this is a very common question that is happening and that is being discussed, for instance, in the context of citizen science initiatives. EXA, the European Citizen Science Association, among its recommendations, suggests that all the data that has been generated by citizens in the context of scientific endeavors should be open. I mean, this is also very related to the open science movements, yeah? But the reality is still that in many cases, especially in citizen science initiatives, the data that is being generated by citizens is not made available on the open domain yet. Yeah, so it is being captured in quotes by the researchers who are doing that research, who are running that citizen science project, the professional researchers who are using the data, yeah, to run analysis. But then in the end, it is not published. So there is an issue on the acknowledgement of the contributions that have been done by citizens. This is a major concern in the citizen science world. And there are clear recommendations of moving into an open science context over there, because if citizens are contributing, why not having access to it? Probably after an embargo period, yeah? It makes sense for the professional scientists to have some time to analyze the data. But the reality is that not all the citizen-generated data is open. And also the one that is on private companies, yeah, the data that we are providing to Google Places or Foursquare is not open. I mean, we can access it, but I mean, it's not available under an open access, yeah? Mm-hmm. Ima was asking about whether others was the private sector in the context of actors. Yeah, it could be the private sector. It could be also the third sector. I mean, associations, NGOs, and so on. We didn't specialize this part unless we find that, I mean, it makes sense. We may be able to specialize it, but we wanted to have also their and others that contains private sector and also NGOs, civil society, and so on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Matthew was asking about the real-time open data. We have not found anything, I think, on the open data portals on real time. Yeah. If we move away, yeah, from actually the open data portals and things that are published over there, we can see a lot of real-time open data in terms of mobility and air quality environmental observations. Yeah, I mean, like people who are setting up sensors in their houses or in their offices or wherever, and they are producing this real-time data. I think that, I mean, I would just categorize from my experience on mobility and environmental data mostly, but these are not necessarily published in the open data portals. Yeah, or I don't recall any of them. Also, some of the colleagues that have helped me on the report, Carlos, Javier, they are around. Probably they can comment. I mean, if they have seen something, but I don't recall any of those ones. Yeah. And Else is asking on the recommendation 7, how would we propose going? I mean, in this recommendation, yeah, collecting use cases, yeah, to showcase the value of citizen-generated data sets. So this is part of the work that we want to do in this third report. Yeah, when we are talking about the governance model, I think that, I mean, like, we would like to have these workshops with stakeholders, different people who have been dealing with citizen-generated data, so as to understand which could be those use cases that could be nicely shown to the outside world. I have a nice example from something where I have been involved with the city of Zaragoza in Spain, where they have an initiative on allowing their citizens to create thematic maps on the city. Yeah, it's called Mis Mapas, Mis Datos, my maps, my data. Yeah, it's very similar to what one can do in OpenStreetMap, for instance. Yeah, for providing data, but it's also, I mean, it has a nice community effect. Yeah, so that I know that senior citizens are generating healthy routes around the city to walk. Yeah, and I think that this could be, for instance, one very interesting use case of primary data that is being collected for that purpose, and where there is a use case that can be found. Yeah. But I mean, most probably with the discussions that we will have in the next months, we will be able to identify more use cases. Yeah. And then I see also from Ima a comment on what do we specifically recommend to public administrations to implement as a priority? Yeah, where to start? Yeah. So our initial assumption, was okay. There is a lot of citizen-generated data from global data sources, and we can think of Wikidata, of OpenStreetMap, of many of the networks of environmental observations and so on, that are very applicable to public administrations. I mean, they would work very nicely at the local or regional level, yeah? Even at the national level, why not? And at the supranational level, well, I mean, we could also combine it, where we could actually extract, I mean, like public administrations may extract data from those places. Imagine extracting data from OpenStreetMap and making it publicly available in the Open Data portal. These are all the train stations identified in OpenStreetMap in our city, in our region, or these are all the, I don't know, streets that are available according to OpenStreetMap, to citizen-generated data sets. I think that this would be a very nice combination of the world of citizen data, that we can see outside, and the world of open data, because it would generate very interesting links. I would suggest that for me, I mean, if I had to decide, this could be a priority, yeah? But obviously, I mean, there are many others. Primary data sources like the claims and suggestions that many institutions are publishing openly, many of them even using the Open 311 vocabulary data model. I think that it's also a nice case, yeah, of making citizen-generated data more visible, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, else, yeah, you say what if there is also non-open citizen-generated data? Why is this not part of the definition in your proposal? Yeah, okay, you are right on that. Yeah, we always had this open data context in mind. Yeah, and that's why we were not including it in the definition. We were not aiming at providing a perfect definition, as I have said. I mean, there is still something to be done on that context. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So for Carlo, on the evidence of open data, I mean, data published as open data portals, you have the link to Zenodo that is in over here, also in the report, where you can access the examples, I mean, with every single detail of the data sets that we have been analyzing. So you could use it as an initial catalog for that, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. The language, from Carla. I'm not sure. I mean, like, I see the language being a barrier, a potential barrier. I mean, also richness as usual. I mean, when we are talking about languages, in the context of textual data that is being generated. I mean, and over here, I would mostly focus on the qualitative part of surveys, yeah, the text-based part of surveys, or the usual questions and answers, claims and suggestions. All those ones are obviously, I mean, in the language of the local, municipality, regional, or national data portal in general are going to be like that. I would really say that the another part of multilinguality that would be important and that has been a challenge for us is really having like a common thesaurus of areas where citizen-generated data is being produced. I mean, the areas that we have proposed or any other classification that we may come up with, so that they can be used in order to tag data sets. So we may have something that is multilingual quite easily because it won't be so many areas. It will be probably 10 categories, 15 categories. And this could already start allowing, helping in the homogenization of finding citizen-generated data sets across portals. Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, when they are published, I mean, when they are cataloging in data.europa.eu. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think that we have 1 minute left. So probably, I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. I mean, that this has given you also another more reason to get back into the report and read it with more attention. We are completely open to receiving any feedback, any further feedback from you. As you see, I mean, there is a further process on this. We will also check what you have been contributing on the survey that we have made available. And I mean, I would just say thanks for your attendance and for your attention.